Good evening and welcome to the Licensing Committee. First of all, are there any apologies for absence? I believe there aren't. Is that correct?
None, Chair.
Thank you very much. And are there any declarations of pecuniary interest tonight? Fabulous. Okay. First thing we're going to do is going to go through the minutes of the last meeting. So pages 1, 2, and 3 of our agenda. Any comments? Any problems? We happy with those? Fantastic. I'll sign them off at some other later date. And that means that we can go straight into the main part of the meeting, which is a report on the 5-yearly review of the Council's Statement of Licensing Policy as required under Section 5 of the Licensing Act 2003 following consultation. Caroline, first of all, Caroline Sharkey, I don't know if many of you will have met her yet. She's our new licensing manager. So I'd like you all to give her a great big hello and a wave because you're all off. Okay.
Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to working with you all.
Caroline, would you like to briefly go through what we're going to be talking about this evening?
Yes, Chair, I've got a presentation to just walk you through the committee report. I don't know whether you want me to do this now or hear the representation from Councillor Barlow.
I will ask Councillor Barlow if you can unmute yourself. Yep. Do you want to represent early? I mean, we know what you're going to be talking about. We've got a lot of papers in front of us which refer. Do you want to represent now, or do you want to wait till after the presentation?
I'm happy to go now.
Go now then. Okay. Representation from Councillor Barlow.
Thank you very much, Councillor Draper. So for the...
Oh goodness, he's frozen.
Clearly, you must listen to our residents, and they've been clear that licensing in the village is still very much a cause for interest and concern. 137 oppose the change, with just 16 supporting it, with much of the opposition speak on behalf of hundreds of residents and who know their area best. You only have to walk the high street to realise the density of licensed properties, something that makes the village a great place to be, but also that residents rightly want to set a limit on. The CIZ provided this, with something of a one-in, one-out policy developing, all with similar hours for the past 14 years. Now, with the difficulties facing all high streets, residents are rightly concerned that more shops will fall by the wayside with only licensed premises in their place and without CIZ to protect their interests. As so many of them have said, the policy has been a victim of its own success and residents of not having kicked up enough fuss about issues that may have arisen whilst the CIZ has been in place. Nuisance and annoyance is rightly something most people would not trouble the council or emergency services with, but that certainly doesn't mean it isn't happening with lives blighted on a regular basis. And there's more serious issues too, like the increase in late night drinking on the common, highlighted under item 5 of your packs, resulting in multiple emergency call-outs and at least one section 35 dispensal notice. Our Safer Neighbourhood team have also encouraged young people not to socialise on the common, as many have been victims of robberies. And perhaps the council's consideration of litter as a licensing issue could also extend to the village, a major problem not just on the common, but in many surrounding streets too. For these and the many reasons set out in your papers, I encourage the committee to re-adopt a special policy for Wimbledon Village. It's deeply regrettable that we may need to see the village suffer increased antisocial behaviour again in order to recognise why a special policy is needed. But if this has to be the case, I encourage the committee to ensure this is reviewed at 18 months rather than putting strain on residents for the whole 3 years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Caroline, would you want to respond at this stage, or shall we wait until we've gone through the report? Because it is a very important thing.
Yeah, it is a very important thing, and obviously we've read all the objections that the residents of Wimbledon Village have raised. So if it's okay with you, Chair, I wanted to walk you through the report in detail, and then perhaps answer any queries that the members and Councillor Barlow might have once I've submitted my presentation to you.
I think that's a good idea. Is that acceptable to the committee? Looks like it is. Do carry on.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I wanted to check if members have received the last email that we've received from the police. I did ask Amy to distributed to all members, but I'll be quite happy to read it through if
Would you mind doing so? Yeah.
Yeah. So because the last presentations that you objections that you've received from the local residents obviously raised concerns about the common Wimbledon Common and antisocial behaviour. So obviously, I wanted to make sure that we gather that information from the police to see what the update is since we wrote the policy. And the police emailed me this afternoon, and I'll just go through the email, the content of the email. So basically, Russ Stevens, the police officer, said to me that I have gone through the crimes reported on Wimbledon Common over the last few months, and they have all involved 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, mainly for possession of cannabis, 2 incidents of note, a GBH assault in July, and a personal robbery in August, where youths on the common at night were approached by another group of youths and assaulted and carry out a robbery. Alcohol has not featured in these incidents. We are noticing a rise in antisocial behaviour from youths across the borough and not just in Wimbledon Village. Section 35 has been used recently with some effect. Regular patrols and stops results in arrest and warnings for possession of cannabis. And these patrols are increasing to deal with the knock-on effect of the coronavirus regulations. There really does seem to be more teenagers out at night in Wimbledon, but this cannot be attributed to the local availability of alcohol, more just availability of open space. So that's the email that I received from the police today, and we've circulated it, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to carry on with your presentation now then, Caroline?
Yeah. Yes, I have got a few things that I'll walk you through the report, because I'm obviously conscious that the report is quite detailed, so I'll try my best to summarize it for you, Chair. So section 5 of the Licensing Act requires authorities to review and republish the statement of licensing policy every 5 years. The committee report that you've got in front of you, members, details the outcome of the London Borough Merton statement of licensing policy following the licensing authority consultation on the policy. Members will recall that at the meeting on the 9th of June, the licensing committee agreed the draft statement of licensing policy for consultation. The committee also reviewed the data sets that would form the evidence basis for introducing a cumulative impact policy within the borough. The committee agreed at that meeting that the consultation for cumulative impact policy should involve around the following areas. It was agreed that the evidence available to support the retention of the 2 existing cumulative impact areas for Wimbledon Town Centre and Mitcham would obviously be consulted. The committee at that meeting also agreed that there was insufficient evidence to support the retention of a special policy for Wimbledon Village. The reasons for this, members, to reach this decision was based on the cumulative impact analysis that is detailed in Appendix D of the report, Chair, and this is produced on pages 79 to 100 of the agenda. The committee also at that meeting agreed that it was not appropriate to include any other areas of the borough in the cumulative impact assessment. So as required under Section 5 of the Licensing Act, the local authority has now consulted directly with statutory responsible authorities under the Act, ward members, persons and bodies representing premises license holders, personal license holders, and local businesses in the borough. Electronic copy of the consultation document was also published on the council's website, and the consultation was also published on social media. The draft statement of licensing policies that the members will be considering today, Chair, is produced in Appendix A of the report, which is on pages 17 to 177 of the agenda. The following was the result of the consultation. So during the consultation period, the licensing authority received 13 responses on the consultation of the draft policy through an online survey. Most of the responses received excluded the information on the cumulative impact assessment. The licensing authority also received responses from the Metropolitan Police and also the Director of Public Health. A summary of the online responses, Chair, is produced in the agenda on pages 59 to 77. Majority of those who responded to the draft policy were very positive towards the existing statement of licensing policy and also the approval or the proposed amendments. Most of the comments relates to the potential of removal of the special policy for Wimbledon Village. Concerns have also been expressed about the littering associated within the licensed premises. It is therefore recommended in the policy, Chair, to amend it in paragraph 13.4 of the draft policy on page 38 of the agenda to ensure that applicants take additional steps to reduce potential for littering to occur from food packaging in the surrounding areas. The Director of Public Health supports the proposed statement of licensing policy, and he has sought a number of amendments relating to the role of public health in licensing. It is recommended in the policy, Chair, to amend and reflect these comments from the Public Health Authority as shown in the draft policy. The Public Health Authority's comments are in section 11 and 14 of the licensing policy, with the exception of a recommendation for an individual public health licensing objective. Unfortunately, due to the lack of the public health as a licensing objective under the Licensing Act, we couldn't recommend the Director of Public Health recommendation to include a public health objective, because to do so, Chair, would have actually put us in a position of a judicial review or any challenges following on any application that members would agree in a licensing subcommittee hearing. So all the other recommendations that the Public Health Authority have put forward have all been agreed, except for that one, for that particular objective of public health. The information that the Public Health Authority has put forward, Chair, is produced on pages 33 to 35 of the agenda. The Metropolitan Police have not raised any comments to the statement of licensing policy. Their comments relate purely to the cumulative impact assessment, which I'll now go through with you now, members. So the cumulative impact assessment section, as you are aware from the report, Chair, licensing authorities are now required to review a cumulative impact assessment as part of their policy every 3 years. This was introduced by Section 141 of the Policing and Crime Act 2017. Under Section 141 of the Policing Crime Act, the cumulative impact assessment has now been given a statutory footing within the Licensing Act. The reason for introducing a cumulative impact assessment to fall within the statutory footing is that the Home Office was concerned that the old system of adopting cumulative impact policies was based on irrelevant data. It was felt that it could lead to disproportionate restrictions on new businesses. It was felt that the old system, if it continued, would be implemented on a relatively weak grounds if remained in place for a number of years, based on unlimited or outdated evidence. It was the government belief that this could lead to disproportionate restrictions on new businesses and potentially an associated impact on communities where a cumulative impact policy could not prevent new venues in town centres which could enhance the area. The lack of poor evidence base could also lead a failure to a cumulative impact policies to stand up to scrutiny in courts. In the event of any appeal that would be made by the licensing policy, it would be difficult for the licensing authority chair as a responsible authority to protect their policy if a cumulative impact policy wasn't reviewed and also adopted to be based on the evidence which is produced in Appendix D of the report. The government believed that it would also assist transparency in decision making if cumulative impact assessment were reviewed every 3 years. It should also be noted, Chair, that the amendments to the Licensing Act brought by the Policing and Crime Act, there is no longer a rebuttable presumption that application for licenses in a cumulative impact policy would be refused. In the old regime of the cumulative impact policies, Chair, there was a rebuttable presumption that if a licensing applications were brought in front of the licensing committee for a application and the premises that was based in the cumulative impact zone, that it could be reviewed. But that has now been taken away, Chair, by the introduction of the new Policing and Crime Act, Section 141. However, what it states that anyone making a representation have to have a regard to a cumulative impact policy, but there is also a requirement that for determining any application, members should give weight to evidence that is brought before them by the objectors. So following the consultation of a cumulative impact assessment, Chair, for the borough, the following is the results that came out of that assessment for the London Borough of Mayton. So for the Wimbledon Town Centre cumulative impact assessment policy, the licensing authority, we received 100 people responded to the online consultation. Of these, 89% agreed strongly that there should be a special policy on a cumulative impact in respect to Wimbledon Town Centre. The Director of Public Health also supports the continuation of the special policy on a cumulative impact centre for Wimbledon Town Centre on the basis that the density of premises and crime data presented in the cumulative impact analysis, which is produced in Appendix D of the report. So the Director of Public Health supports the policy to continue. Metropolitan Police have also responded to the Wimbledon Town Centre and basically said that prior to the lockdown, they required Wimbledon Town Centre required constant management to control antisocial behaviour and crime. They advised that whilst there has been some mild departure from the policy, the existing cumulative impact policy for this area has enabled the licensing authority to heavily restrict new licenses to negate the risk of impact on crime and antisocial behaviour. So the Meacham Town Centre cumulative impact policy, the consultation responses were as follows, Chair. 95 people responded online to the consultation. 76.7 were in favour of the special policy on the cumulative impact relating to off-sales in the Meacham Town Centre. The Director of Public Health has also supported the continuation of the special policy in Meacham, which has restricted off-sales based on the data presented in the Meacham cumulative impact analysis. Again, this information, Chair, is produced in Appendix D of the report. The data, according to the Director of Public Health, states that it shows high levels of hospital admissions for alcohol-related conditions in the wards, which fall into the cumulative impact area for Meacham. The Metropolitan Police have stated that from my observation and experience over the last 4 years, there is clear evidence that the cumulative impact zone has been very effective in Meacham and Wimbledon town centres. Antisocial behaviour and crime associated with drinking in Meacham town centre remains a problem. And the licensing police officer often makes representation to new premises license application. So the final cumulative impact assessment was for Wimbledon Village, and these are the consultation responses, Chair. We had 88 people responded to online consultation. Of these, 12.5 strongly agreed that there was insufficient evidence to retain a special policy in Wimbledon Village, but 87.5 disagreed and strongly disagreed with this statement. In addition, Chair, we received 65 responses directly by email to objecting to the removal of Wimbledon Village Cumulative Impact Zone, with 5 in support. The main thrust of the objections to removing the special policy cumulative impact zone for Wimbledon Village are all listed in paragraph 4.8 of the committee report, Chair. This is on page 12 of the agenda. The Director of Public Health was also commented on in support of the discontinuation of the cumulative impact policy for Wimbledon Village. The Director of Public Health has said that the data presented in the cumulative impact analysis does not support a cumulative impact on the licensing objectives in Wimbledon Village. There's no alcohol-related hospital admissions in the village ward. They are the lowest in the borough. The police, Metropolitan Police, also advised that Wimbledon Village has not suffered from any antisocial behaviour associated with cumulative impact effect of multiple premises selling alcohol in that area. Alcohol-related crime is in that area extremely low, despite the presence of several bars and restaurants, and antisocial behaviour complaints have only ever been about the individual premises. Again, this information and all the responses, Chair, are produced in Appendix C of the report, which is on pages 63 to 77 of the agenda. In terms of introducing a special policy, the licensing authority received 86 responses to the online consultation, but these 87 had no view whether the cumulative impact policy should be introduced anywhere within the borough. But the Director of Health commented on the cumulative impact analysis, found that there was a high density of licensed premises in Morden Town Centre. 31 premises coincided on licensed premises of violence, antisocial behaviour and ambulance call-outs in the wards which connected to it. As such, the Director of Public Health, Chair, has recommended that perhaps we need to acknowledge in future going forward that Morden Town Centre could be considered in future, but it did acknowledge that there is a planned redevelopment within that area, and basically said that it's important that any actions to tackle these issues are fully evidence-based and would not interfere with the planning developments within that area. So while a cumulative impact zone for Morden Town Centre is not appropriate at this time, Public Health proposes that an audit of this area and consultation with the local residents be undertaken with the aim of informing the next review of cumulative impact in 3 years. This sentiment, Chair, has been echoed by the Merton Conservative Group, who also raised concerns about the level of violence and antisocial behaviour in the Morden Town Centre. And whilst not wishing to introduce a special policy in that area, this time would support further action in the future. Chair, on paragraph 14.24 of section 1H2 guidance, provides cumulative impact assessment and not an absolute. This is what I mentioned earlier, Chair, to say that each application for a license should be treated on its own merits still, notwithstanding the existence of a cumulative impact area, taking into account the particular circumstances. The requirements for determining a new or variation application are the same within a cumulative impact area as they are elsewhere. So cumulative impact area should not be used as a tool to just make a decision on application. Other factors need to be considered when members are making a decision in a licensing subcommittee hearing. I would also say, Chair, that statutory guidance also advises evidence the statutory guidance, which is Section 1H2, issued under the Licensing Act, provides that responsible authorities should be given more weight when considering any cases or any application, because they are experts in their own respective fields. So what I would ask members today to do in relation to the consultation on the cumulative impact assessment, which has been carried out for Wimbledon, members are asked today to either adopt the policy on the cumulative impact area for Wimbledon on the basis that there is sufficient evidence to show that number of density of premises in the area is having a cumulative impact and leading to problems which are undermining the licensing objectives. Members are also, I've got another option to not adopt a special policy in this area at this time, as the cumulative impact zone is in place over the last 14 years, had achieved its objective, and that there is no longer the evidence to implement a special policy under the revised legislation to review the situation in 3 years as required by statute. The second option is not to adopt the special policy in the area, as this time, as the cumulative impact has been in place for the last 14 years and achieved its objective, and there is no longer the evidence to implement a special policy, but to review the situation again in 18 months and bring the report back to the committee for the committee to consider it, whether it's appropriate to adopt a policy for Wimbledon Village. With regard to the all policy in its entirety, Chair, with everything else, members are asked today to consider the following options. Members are asked to consider the comments received during the public consultation process for the draft policy, which took place between 15th of June and 7th of September. Members are asked to debate, recommend and amend or approve the proposed cumulative impact assessment, having regard to the responses received from the public consultation. Members are also asked to approve delegated authority of the licensing manager in consultation with the chairman of the licensing committee to approve any amendments to the statement of licensing policy, cumulative impact assessment following the committee meeting today and prior to the submission of the policy for adoption on the 18th of November to the full council. Finally, members are asked today to approve the draft statement of licensing policy and cumulative impact subject to the above paragraph subject to the above, and recommend for the adoption of the full policy on 18th of November 2020. That's my presentation, Chair. I do apologize it's long, but I just thought it's important for me to give you some pertinent points within the committee report. So I've got, I'm happy to answer any questions that members.
Thank you very much, Caroline. And I'm going to contradict you, although it was long, because it was long because it had to be. I think personally, given the complexity of the report, you were very succinct. Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it to the floor to anybody who has any questions or comments. First of all, Una, do you want to unmute yourself?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you too for that very informative report and your summary. I think we had a pretty long debate about all of this in June, and like many members on the licensing committee, I was concerned, and I still am, about removing Village, but I can see that given the lack of evidence, from the police, we supported that action. I am, however, interested by the idea of an 18-month review, and I just wonder on the legality of that, given that the Act, I think, states 3-year review. So I just really wanted a bit of information on that, and whether we could carry through that. otherwise, I think the report is, yeah, I mean, I think it's very full and covers a lot of different views and consultation, but and I support otherwise what's in there, but that's my, you know, just like clarification on that point about the 18 months. Thank you.
Caroline?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And yeah, 18 months, we thought to give you, obviously, because as you know, we haven't got any evidence at the moment. And we just think maybe in 18 months, we can come back, collect the same data that we produce in Appendix D. And if there was evidence to inform us that we need to adopt the policy, you will have that opportunity to do so. And then if the policy was in place, then we would decide whether it's a maximum period of 3 years, or we can coincide, because the policy, the current policy, if it's adopted, it will be 5 years. So we can keep it in line, again, from when the policy, if it's adopted, and keep it in line, and then review it again, review the cumulative impact again within 3 years.
Thank you very much.
Does that answer the question? Sorry.
Sorry, it does. Any other queries or comments at this stage? Councillor Simpson. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
I will. I have. My goodness. Thank you. Chairman, I entirely support what Councillor Moulton has just said, and I think that I would be more than happy to propose that the committee actually goes on the decision making, goes for 613, and that is to give the option of an 18-month period to review the village. Otherwise, I think the report stands as it is. It is a good document. It is very clear and succinct in what it can and cannot do. And I think that the decisions that we reached in June quite clearly were the right decisions, given the lack of evidence, as Una Moulton has just described. So I would strongly hope that this committee would, with the same unanimity that we had in June, support the idea that we offer the 18-month review, subject, of course, to the necessary evidence base that would be required to do that. Thank you
very much. Any other queries? This is Joan, Councillor Henry.
Thank you. Caroline, I just want to say thank you very much. Your report is well put together. Matter of fact, I go along with my two colleagues. There's nothing much else I can say. I just want to say thank you and stay with us.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, there you go. Any other comments at this stage? Well, I have just one to add. I think this is, I agree very, very much with the idea of an 18-month review. I've got to say, I've got a lot of sympathy for Councillor Barlow having to come here today to actually present this, because it is really, really difficult. You know, I've got sympathy for the village. It's a beautiful place, and it is a calm place. It's not totally crime-free, but it is a place which doesn't have vast crime. I think, you know, it's quite normal as well to kind of react to what happened during the course of the summer. All our parks were invaded, but the parks in Wimbledon Village are particularly close to housing and stuff like that, and it would have been very, very obvious to people that what was going on. I have to say that Mitcham Common, of which I'm the chair of the Conservators, not Conservatives, that we had tremendous problems there as well. Not only, believe it or not, drunkenness and unruly behaviour, but fishing while drunk and unruly. And the police were called in quite a lot of times. But you don't hear about that quite so often because it's more hidden away. So everybody had those problems. But nevertheless, I sympathise entirely with the residents of Wimbledon Village who were concerned at that. And I'd want to reassure not only Councillor Barlow, but all the councillors here that we work closely with the police as far as making sure that our areas are, be they green spaces or otherwise, are safe. So I think it's a really good idea that we go for another look at it in 18 months' time. I also think, and this kind of echoes what the Conservative group have been saying about Morden, that we should do at the same time have a look at Morden. As long as we feel that we'd be able to accumulate enough data in that time, I'd like us to actually have a quick look at it to make sure that we are on the right track in not having a CIA there for the moment. I just want to see, do you think is that second part, is everybody in favour of that as well? Looking at Morden as well? Okay, anybody disagree? Anyone disagree?
No.
Then Caroline, can we add that in as well? So we're going for the report as it stands, except with the review in 18 months' time, and we include a review of Morden at the same time.
Yes, that's fine. We'll produce that information for you in 18 months' time.
Sorry, you wouldn't be doing a review of the town centre, village, Wimbledon town centre at the same time as well?
Well, Wimbledon Town Centre, as we know, it's obviously already got a cumulative impact assessment. Yeah. So it will be Wimbledon Village and Morden Town Centre.
Okay, okay.
I don't see a need to review either Mitcham or Wimbledon Town Centre in 18.
Yeah, I mean, all I was going to add, I totally agree with what Caroline said in terms of, you know, the unfortunate part of this is that the new legislation, or well, 2017 legislation, is very clear that you have to have evidence on which to base your CIA, and without that, you cannot go forward with imposing a higher saturation sort of view of things. It's unfortunate and a difficult thing, I think, for the committee to consider. It's not an easy one, but I would say that yes, I don't see why you can't legally review things in 18 months to see how things have progressed since this cumulative impact assessment has been imposed, if that's what you decide today. And that may indeed, as you say, address this issue in relation to the village, but also, as you say, deal with Morden, which may be an area that's becoming more of a concern.
Thank you, thank you. Councillor Curler, I think you wanted to be, yes.
Yes, thank you.
I was dancing.
No, indeed. Thank you. I just want to work out what our role is here. If we're being told we don't have any role to play, we just have to do as we're required, I'm not sure what our function is as councillors. It seems to me that if the residents have been so strong in saying that they want a CIA, I think that we should listen to their consultation, frankly. I find it bizarre that we are being told that we simply don't have the authority to do that, because isn't that our function?
Is that one for me to answer as on a legal basis?
Please.
Okay. I mean, the problem here is that we have to sort of comply with the Policing and Crime Act 2017, and it is clear at section 5A that a cumulative impact assessment must set out the evidence for the authority's opinion. The problem is you don't have that evidence to have the opinion that you should impose a saturation policy, as you in those are the words I'm using, for the village. That's the problem. It may be that the residents absolutely want it, but it's a matter of evidence, and it's now statute as opposed to case law.
Why do we consult them?
Well, because firstly, as a licensing committee, it is your policy that you're putting in place. So you're delegated under the Licensing Act 2003. Secondly, under the amendments under the Policing and Crime Act 2007 and the 2003 Act, it is your responsibility to impose and draft and prepare and approve your cumulative impact assessment. So, you know, as I say, the only problem you have is that as a committee, it has to be evidence-based.
But there's a total lack of logic to this whole process, though, because basically what we're saying.
Oh,
Sorry.
Gone.
You hear me?
Is he here? Yeah, you still there, Paul? Oh,
You hear me? Can you hear me?
just about. Yes, you've gone blank, but we can hear you.
Sorry, yes, I don't know why I've gone blank. I can't see you either. There's a total lack of logic here, though, because basically what we're saying is if a CIA works, you can't renew it. Whilst if it doesn't work, you're allowed to renew it. And so it just seems to me
well, no, not quite.
Bonkers to me.
Not quite, Councillor Kohler, because the CIP, the CIZ, arose from obviously a case law, and as such was imposed back in what's probably 14 years ago now, and it's been renewed at those times when it had evidence to back it. The problem is the evidence is not there now. That's the problem.
Yeah,
Well, only because it's worked.
hang on.
Well,
Excuse me. I'd like to come in at this stage. Say, yeah, I understand what you're saying, Paul, and I think we all understand what you're saying. But the thing is, what we've got is we've got a law, okay? And we work under the law. We follow the law, and the law says what Caroline and Guy have explained to us, and there's nothing that we can do about that. However, within the law, what we can do and what we are doing today is we are extending the what was the CIZs and now the CIAs to Wimbledon town and to Mitcham, which is in our gift. It's what we're able to do. We're also going to, I hope you agree with this, look at Morden on the same basis to see if there is evidence which suggests that we should actually introduce a CIA to Morden. However, we don't have evidence for the village. The village is, according to the evidence that we have in our packs here, the safest place in the whole of Merton from the point of view of antisocial behaviour, etc. It doesn't mean to say there is no antisocial behaviour, but it says that it's safe. Records also will show that it's been the safest place for quite a long period of time. And you know, we have to work on what we have in front of us, I'm afraid. Right. Sorry, I'm not turning you off, but you know that is it. We have to follow the law.
sorry,
I know.
Councillor Draper, can I just say one other thing? Whilst I can see that your view is you're proposing to have a review of the village, a review of where was it, Morden, as well in due course. Can I suggest again maybe providing the licensing manager with a little bit of flexibility, that you extend it not just to those two places, but also you say that if there's anything else you want to add in, you can do that. I mean, I do wonder if certain other parts may be areas where that has to be considered.
Guy, that's very helpful. I mean, and I'm sure that Caroline would think that's helpful as well. I mean, I have concerns, not very high concerns, but concerns about Collier's Wood, for instance.
I was gonna, yeah, that was one area.
And you know, Pollard's Hill might also present problems. I don't know whether Joan could help us on that, but I think
I was just going to say that too, because we definitely need some support in that area, especially where the drinking is concerned.
Mm-hmm. Well, so it could well be, Caroline, that when we're looking at these things in 18 months' time, that we take a look at the statistics across the board and see what we should be looking at.
That's fine, Chair. But what I wanted to reassure members as well is we need to. There are other powers that are already in place, things like public space protection orders, antisocial behaviour. The police have got more powers, which are quicker as well to deal with, because they can deal with dispersal orders, and they've got powers to confiscate alcohol from people if they're causing disorder in the streets. So it's just to reassure members that there are additional powers that can quickly resolve the problem as well, in addition to all the concerns.
Thank you very much for that. Right, colleagues, unless anyone has something new to add, what we're agreeing on is to agree the report with a review at 18 months, definitely of the village. I would suggest definitely of Morden, but allowing the licensing manager the opportunity to look at other areas as well and bring them back to us in 18 months' time. Is that acceptable generally? So can I have a thumbs up?
One other thing.
Oh, sorry, hang on.
Sorry, Chair, one other thing. You will want to approve the draft licensing policy.
We will be doing that in a moment. Gives a chance. Let's get through this one first. Are we okay with what we've agreed on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody's in agreement. Fabulous.
Yes.
And now the licensing policy as a whole. Do we agree on the licensing policy as a whole?
Agree.
Fabulous. That is really good. Thank you ever so much, colleagues. We did that well.
Yeah, can I just, sorry, Chair, to interrupt. There's another on number C as well. If we have any amendments, to be given a delegated authority in consultation with you, Chair, if we need to do any amendments between now and before referring the report to full council.
Do we agree that? Yeah, we agree that as well, Caroline. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Fabulous. Are we agreed on everything to your satisfaction?
No, thank you, Chair. No, that, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we've ticked all the boxes at the consultation.
That's great. Well, listen, thank you very much indeed, all of you colleagues. I mean, it has been a complicated thing. Congratulations to all the officers who've had a part in making this happen so slickly. Thank you very much on their behalf, Caroline, on your behalf as well, and to Guy too. All right, and if we have no other business, that's us done for this evening, colleagues.
Great.
Right, get to the pub while you still